hold on a second, I'm a 94% test taker and I've never heard this word in my life.
Yep.
That can really be a confidence killer. And yeah, so what are those called again?
They're pilot questions.
What does that mean?
And so every exam has a different amount of pilot questions. And they're basically questions that registries test them out. Are they good questions?
Mm-hmm.
They don't count towards your score.
They don't count.
They don't count towards your score. And so what I tell everybody is that when you come across that question, you're like, oh my gosh, what are they talking about? No, pilot question. Do the best I can and move on. I'm not going to get stuck on it because it's probably just a pilot question.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Reddit Rescue. This is Dan and Ray. We're here to answer questions from the subreddit new to EMS and other EMS Reddit threads. If you've never listened or tuned in before, we answer questions directly from Reddit surrounding first responders EMS questions. And so we got a great one today. This one here, got the last question on my NREMT today wrong. I assume that means I failed? Maybe. Not necessarily, we'll figure it out. It says, how to define expressive aphasia, and I answered it as the ability to move facial muscles over the inability to communicate. I assume that means I failed since the last question was wrong. Passed the mock exam with 83% yesterday, and I've been studying. Everybody around me telling me that it's not trying to trick me and that it's easier than people make it out to be. Straight A student who passed the EMT class at 94%, but I felt so unprepared in the exam and saw so many words I had not seen before. I hear a lot of people say that.
Yep.
Seen before and felt very tricked. I need to certify before summer, and yet if I fail, I have to wait another 15 days. There is a gap if you do fail. You do get to take it 3 times remediation, 3 times again, but there is a 15 days in between.
Just to refresh,
and
of course.
It's another $104 out of the hole. I don't understand how this happened. Took all the advice I've ever gotten, seen through the fog, read the answer and reread the question. Don't second guess yourself, get good sleep and eat good, study hard, all of it. I've always been an overachiever in school, and all of my classmates looked up to me and joked about if I failed, nobody stood a chance. So not sure what to do now. So this is a loaded question. There's a lot in here. I can just feel that there is a lot on the line here. I know that there's a deadline of trying to get your EMT certification and get the ball rolling by summertime. I think that all EMT students or anybody who takes a vocational program or anything like that, we're looking to get in and get out and get ahead is what they say. They're trying to get it done quickly. It can never be fast enough because what we want, we can taste. It's on the other side of that certification.
Yep. We're ready for it. That's why we started.
It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of advice. There's a lot of people telling you how to basically like hack the NREMT. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no hack. It's whether you know it or not. But Dan, what do you think about this? Let's ignore the fact that whether the question was right or wrong. That's irrelevant. But I know that I, in the past, have heard and have told people to pay attention to the last question before it turns off. If you can remember, if you got it right, that means you passed if you got it wrong. And so let's just set the record straight. Dan, is that true? Is that still applicable?
No. So registry is a little bit of a riddle, but the problem with people coming out of EMT school and then taking national registry is we're taught to get through EMT school. We're not taught to go through registry. So registry doesn't have curriculum. Programs have curriculum. So that means whether you're going LIMR or you're going JB Learning, whatever, they've all got their own little pot of information that's going to be similar. So how does that correlate with national registry? And so that can make things a little confusing. And so the short answer is national registry is testing entry level competence for what they're expecting in basic principles for EMS. Are you generally aware and do you know this material? Can you make these different connections in these topics? And so
that's why the language doesn't translate. When all of my students, we use JB Learning at my program. So all of the students say, I am familiar with this vocabulary, this glossary. And when I went to National Registry, the words were totally different. It's because they're not married.
No, you're not getting tested on curriculum.
Yeah.
You're getting tested on EMS. So this is the thing for registry, and it's simpler than people think. Not that it's not a difficult test, but you just need to understand what registry is looking for. Registry does not have curriculum, but they do provide you with something. Your skill sheets.
Yes.
So you got your medical and your trauma assessment. Almost 1/3 of every chapter through EMT school is medical and trauma assessment, right? Here's your assessment. So here's the illness, here's the assessment, here's how you treat it. But every chapter is like that. Do you think they might test the assessments? Absolutely. So you got to know your medical and trauma assessment from start to finish in exact order. Not just I know the steps. You need to know the steps exactly in order, because registry is going to ask you, what do you do next? And you're one person doing one thing at a time, working down an outline. And that outline is your medical and trauma assessment.
They're even going to ask you questions like, what is in the primary assessment? And if you're blurring that with your secondary assessment or your scene size up, you're not going to be able to go, oh, what's in that category?
Nope.
And it's next things next. We're all used to hearing it's the most correct answer, right? For National Registry, that is true. There's a correct answer, then there's most correct, but it's also what is the next step?
That's it.
Not what would be great, what definitely needs to be done, what is maybe the answer, the solution, but it's you've done this and this, what's next? Yeah, and if you don't have that sheet,
how do you decide that?
You're lost.
How do you decide your medical and your trauma assessment? So on that little sheet next to you, I tell everybody write down their medical and trauma assessment from top to bottom, release that mental equity. Now, when you're taking the test, you're like, oh, it's an assessment. This was the last thing. What's the next thing? I look at my list. Oh, vital signs.
Yeah.
There you go. Vital signs isn't an answer. Okay, so what comes after that? Oh, it's that, like, just use it like an outline. Use it like Google Maps. We don't drive anywhere without our Google Maps. Use that sheet next to you as Google Maps, your medical and trauma assessment. And the other thing that people need to understand is that registry is not trying to catch you, and they're not trying to trick you, because they're not getting real clever in the curriculum because they don't have curriculum.
Right.
So they're going to do some basic principles. And so you have to have a really good idea overall of what you're looking at and what you're going to do next. And then those correlations, like you see the term barrel chest, guess what? You're looking for emphysema. Mm-hmm. They might give you 10 different respiratory signs and symptoms. Respiratory signs and symptoms are respiratory signs and symptoms until there's something off. And then you know what the ailment is. Mm-hmm. So you just got to recognize it and then catch those correlations. And the other thing, not to get too deep into the weeds, is every exam has a minimum number of questions and a maximum number of questions, except for advanced, which is a linear, like paper-based test. It's got a definite number of questions. Okay. There's a big chunk of the questions on these exams that are pilot questions.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, because that can really put a hole in your confidence while taking the test. We're like, whoa, hold on a second. I'm a 94% test taker and I've never heard this word in my life.
Yep.
That can really be a confidence killer. And yeah, so what are those called again?
They're pilot questions.
What does that mean?
And so every exam has a different amount of pilot questions. And they're basically questions that registry is testing out. Are they good questions? Mm-hmm. They don't count towards your score.
They don't count.
They don't count towards your score. And so what I tell everybody is that when you come across that question, you're like, oh my gosh, what are they talking about? No, pilot question. Do the best I can and move on. I'm not going to get stuck on it because it's probably just a pilot question.
People I might answer 50 pilot questions. That can be a total confidence killer. So everyone needs to know.
Don't get stuck.
PSA, public service announcement. Sometimes there's some questions on there that aren't supposed to be there.
Nope. And they're testing them. And you know what, that question, that's a bad question. It really might be a bad question and it's going to get weeded out. So don't get stuck on the one question. That last question you took might have been a pilot question.
It definitely could have been. Yeah.
So because you don't know, don't read into it too much. But I'll tell you this, here's the nuts and bolts of it. Okay. Be right consistently or wrong consistently. And so if you misunderstood something, misunderstand it consistently. The test is looking, because it's competency based, whether or not you've reached the level of entry level understanding and competence or not. Okay. If you answer something consistently right, it's going to say, hey, they got it. Uh-huh. If you answer it wrong, the test is going to be like, they have no idea what they're doing. And it's going to shut you off early. So the folks that they fail at 70 questions or 75 questions, you were inconsistent. You convinced the algorithm early that you don't know what you're doing because you're doing nothing consistently. Right. But if you go all the way to 120, maybe there was an area of comprehension you were missing. You kept missing this OBGYN question.
That happened with me with like snake and spider bites during my paramedic one. I'm like, I don't know. We've got 2 here. Okay. I'm in California. I have no idea.
But that's what it's like. And hey, maybe those are snake pilot questions. Maybe you got 10 of them because they're trying to figure out like, hey, which are good snake questions, which are not. You don't know. So just answer it wrong consistently
Okay.
or answered it right consistently, because you don't have to pass all 5 competency levels.
Okay.
You have to have an average, you have to score at 950 or above, which means you can flop in one category and you can crush another category and you can meet that 950.
Wait, that's different than it was before, right? Wasn't it before it was you had to score 70% in each category and you can fail one category?
Nope.
Or no? It's always been this way. Yeah.
So that's what I thought too. And I called registry and I just flat out talked to them. Okay, what's this scaled scoring thing? What's going on?
Doing the work for the people.
Yeah. And so they flat out told me, I learned a ton. But so with the scaled scoring, they went away from saying you did well in this category, but you failed in this category, because what was happening was people would say, wow, I really didn't do well in cardiology. So they'd go back and they would study their pants off in cardiology and not pay attention to OBGYN. And then they would fail OBGYN.
Oh, yeah.
And then they were like, what's going on? Now you go into your third test. Typically, students I work with that are testing more than twice, they're not testing anymore. They're scrambling. They're in panic mode. And so now they're being very inconsistent, right? They're jumping all over. So typically you fail twice, unless somebody steps in and speaks confidence into you and puts the guardrails on and lets you know how to focus. You're probably going to test a few more times because you're scared and you're scrambling.
Half of my NREMT coaching is literally mindset and confidence building. And it's really just removing the things that you're putting in your own way, because the information is there. If you've gone through the class to pass the class, I have to say that whatever program you went to has a standard. And if you made it through, it's in there. It's just you're in your own way. And you've read so many Reddit threads or talked to so many people that have made you so nervous that you shoot yourself in the foot. What is it about adaptive? We've all heard this word adaptive. The test is adaptive. What does that mean?
So with the adaptive, and this is for your EMR, your basic, and your paramedic. And advanced is linear, like I said, paper-based. There's 130 questions. And there's 130 questions, and 30 of those are pilot.
Okay.
So you got a 100-question test and 30 that's just, hey, maybe they're a good question, maybe they're a bad question. Don't get twisted. Every question you don't know, pretend it's a pilot, move on.
Dude, that would be, yeah.
That part stinks. But so then with the adaptive test, they're trying to get you to that baseline. Hey, are they competent in this level? So they're going to ask you a question. You get it. They're going to ask you one a little harder. You get it. They're going to ask you one a little harder. You get it wrong. They're going to back it down, maybe give you one or two at this level, and then give you another one, this one. They're going to see how high you can above that competency level. So what this means is once you hit that competency level, the test just keeps getting worse and worse. So everybody feels like crap on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Because they keep testing your competency. Okay, so you've met entry-level competency, but we still got there's a minimum number of questions here. How good are you at it? How good is your program? What do you got in the tank? So they keep asking you harder and harder questions. So you feel awful afterwards because you're challenged the whole time, because question 7 is based off of how you answered question 1, whether you got it right or wrong.
Got it.
And it's also broken down into percentages. So there's a certain percent of the test that is going to be in the 5 different categories. And so what this also means is maybe you needed to get that one more EMS ops question. That threw the percentages off, and so now you need to answer 2 more trauma questions. Congratulations, you got your last trauma question wrong.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter because you're already above the competency level, but they needed to round out the percentages.
Oh, wow.
So just let it go. Like,
easier said than done, but that's the ultimate undertone is it is what it is. You guys say it is what it is. And so I think that's a rite of passage for all EMTs is that 24-hour butt pucker is click, they don't tell you, and just refresh through the night. Just refreshing. Yeah, I suggest that win or lose, we write, we celebrate, we're going out to dinner, you take the test.
Yes, there's a washout rate from school. The fact that you're sitting for registry means that you're a success.
Yeah,
like
you are.
Washout rate from school. You made it. You got a seat at the table. And in fact, they know this test is difficult. They literally give you 6 times.
Yeah.
It's like you go to the carnival and they're like, oh, shoot this basketball for $5. You get 3 shots. Because they don't expect you to make it the first or second time. But you got a few reps.
That makes me feel weird.
6 times to take this test, and they're separated by 15 days. And after the third one, a refresher course. Relax. Like, I know we all want to start and get to work, but it turns out if you've got a 20-year career, those 15 days don't matter all that much.
Oh, man, I wish I could get people to realize that when they're in the thick of it. I see so many of my students, they're asking questions about years down the line. and they're talking about running and they're not even crawling yet.
Be present.
The process, just be present in the process, enjoy the experience. Don't fall into the trap of destination addiction and always thinking that you're going to be able to celebrate yourself or be happy with where you're at when you get to the next thing, because guess what? You feel the same when you get to the next thing. It's just a new goal over and over again.
You're going to finish and be lousy at it. You're new.
Congratulations on passing your class. Let's talk about that. You passed your class. Congratulations of sitting down and taking your NREMT and doing it.
And let me nutshell this thing real quick, okay? And I got a whole program of this at Jump Bag EMT for the master class or the prep course. The master class is self-paced and it's pre-recorded, and then I go live once a week where you can ask questions and do it.
It's so good, you guys.
This works. It's not that I've hacked registry. It's that I've got tools that I can provide that you then can apply for you, because you're adults, so adult heart, and do what works for you. But here's an outline of things you can do. But the test is basically this. It's competency-based, which means it's going to feel awful for everyone. Mm-hmm. So don't expect to be confident going on the other side of it, because it just keeps getting harder. Be right consistently or be wrong consistently. Then you are going to have clear data that you misunderstood something, mm-hmm. right? Or that you had it, and it's going to work the same for the algorithm in the computer system. Mm-hmm. So it'll be clear data of why you failed, and you'll be able to navigate, hey, I was really struggling in an airway, and I see that. But if you keep changing your answers, you're not going to know how to study.
Yeah.
Right. So miss consistently or be right consistently, that you're gonna function with that. Second off, have a study calendar. I hate calendars. I hate planners. You get this doubt in the back of your head. Have I done enough? If you look back at the past 3 weeks and say, I've met these benchmarks, as you approach test day, you can say, yeah, I did enough. I've walked this out.
Yeah.
And that's a confidence.
It's like losing weight. People are saying, oh, there's a million ways that we can lose weight. You put yourself in a calorie deficit and then you exercise, you're going to shed weight. That's just the fact. If you put on time studying, you can't not be smarter than the last minute that you weren't studying. Every minute is better. Absolutely.
Every minute is better. And then the other thing that I tell people, and this one's huge, I think Ray, you'll like this one, is fine. So again, I'm not trying to pump me. There's a lot of good programs out there, but I do have a practice exam suite where you can go and take practice tests. One of the things I like about mine, and I'm sure other people have it as well, there's a lot of good resource out there, a lot of good people, but I like to have simulation exams where they're long. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they're broken up into percentages you're going to see on National Registry. And I like to have students take them one time a week, at least, depending on how many weeks they are up to their exam. Because if you're doing, I call them poop quizzes, right? Because you're doing 10, 15, 20 questions every time you poop, right? Because you're sitting there and you got your phone. Yeah. So knocking out them poop quizzes, you only get used to taking 20 questions. So by the time you hit 50 or 60, you're starting to panic because you're in an uncomfortable situation you haven't been before. Yes. Football players wear a helmet with no shoulder pads for the first 3-4 weeks before they put pads on, so they can get used to the headache, and it becomes normal. And now they just play. Mm-hmm. So get in the saddle.
Yeah.
Sit for an hour and a half and take 120, 130 question tests, broken up in the same percentages once a week. That way, when you get into the exam, it's normal things happen normally. And so you take the environment, that stress, that chaos that is National Registry, or that you think is, and you harness that cat, and you're like, hey, this is just a normal day in the office.
Right.
This is what I do. So you can relieve the stress of the unknown by simply making it normal.
Yeah, you cannot prepare for a marathon by running a mile a day if the furthest you've gone is a mile. And so if you're doing poop quizzes, absolutely.
Which I love. I love poop quizzes.
I think that's actually, that doesn't answer this person's question, but it's super valuable of test fatigue. Absolutely. People test fatigue. I make my final, and it's a big suck sandwich that my students have to eat, but my final is 150 questions for that exact purpose.
Yeah.
Not because I'm like, I put 150 on there. Good luck. You guys have stressed me the entire semester. Here's a little payback. No, it's because I know that if you can't sit still long enough and you start to throw Hail Marys and just pick C, those might be the ones. And you have to practice your test fatigue and your stamina for that. There's a very good chance that a lot of people that are failing, it's either psychological, like you're saying, they get past 50 and they go, oh, what am I doing wrong? And confidence just pours out. Or they get bored or they get frustrated and they just go, I don't want to be doing this anymore. The sooner I get to the end, it's just like our medical and trauma scenarios in class. They just say, if I can just say, reassess my patient every 5 minutes, I pass. If I can just get to the bottom of the sheet, and we try to get them to be comfortable being in the sheet and going through the scenario.
Like that. You're in the sheet.
You gotta be in the sheet. Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah, we got a lot out of this question. I empathize with you and how you feel. You're not the only one.
Don't worry about the last question. Trust the process. Sit in the saddle and just be consistent. And you're going to have clear data from it. And the last little nugget, okay, the last little nugget. Oh, this is the master class. I'm giving away all, but that's fine. I mean, we're all going to be working together, right? Yeah. There's scenario questions and there's data questions.
I was hoping you were going to talk about that. I was going to tee this up for you, but I love your NREMT quiz test for actually taking the test. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that one's in the masterclass, but you've got scenario questions, you've got data questions. So the scenario will lay out the scenario and it'll say, what do you do next? What is the next step? And so then you look at the answers and there's actions, right? Because it's a scenario. Then you'll get a question that says, you arrive on scene to a 6-year-old eating hard candy who then began to have difficulty breathing. What would you expect the lung sounds to be? That is not a scenario.
Right.
It's saying, what are the lung sounds with an upper airway obstruction? That's a data question. That's just a definition.
Right.
So you look at the answers and it's just a word. It's not an action. It's just a term or a sound. That's a data question. So when you read that question about the 6-year-old or whatever, and you're thinking, none of these answers are good because you need to be able to do this and that, you're probably trying to answer a scenario question and they're not giving you actions. They're trying to ask you, what does it sound like? So if you feel like you don't have enough information, read all the answers, not for process of elimination, but just to decide what kind of question is being asked, and then look at it through that lens. A lot of national registry is the lens through which you look at it. I'm looking at it through the lens of the medical and trauma assessments. I'm looking at this through the lens of a data question.
Yeah.
If you do that, it's a different exam. It'll still suck because it's competency-based.
Yeah.
It keeps getting harder, but it's a different exam.
It absolutely is.
And you can approach it completely different.
I also think that sometimes students will throw the entire book and all of the war stories they've heard while in class at a scenario and go, in this situation, it could be that, but National Registry doesn't play. They're very clear on what they say. If they didn't say it, they didn't mean it. And if they said it, it's probably valuable. There are some fillers in there. I get that, but there is no, what if it was this in those questions? And the material is in the question and the answers there, they are like an equation that works forward and backwards. And so I would like to add, lock in the mindset that what is registry actually trying to test my competency on that on? So first of all, is this a scenario or is this a data question? All right, what category is it in? Respiratory, cardiac, whatever. And then see if you can tease out what within cardiac are they trying to find out if I know or not.
Yeah.
And then go, okay, I remember hearing about that in school, and you can put the pieces together, right?
Yeah. Like you'll see, you call them light bulbs. I call them unique identifiers. You're going to see these little correlation things. If you take those practice exams, if you walk it out, okay, I keep saying last little nugget, read your glossary. If you're getting ready for a national registry and you're like, oh, there's so much stuff to study, get your textbook.
No, that's worth an encore. The glossary. So many people say, I didn't know that word. And if you don't know the word, you can't answer the question.
Yeah. What if you've read the glossary 5 times, you see a word that you've never seen before? It's probably a distractor.
It's not a real word. It's a distractor. Yeah.
Throw it out
too.
So you read the glossary and you're like, man, Beck's triad. I just don't remember Beck's triad. You got an index right next to glossary. Page over, look up Beck's triad, go back, read a couple pages. Now you have context.
Yeah.
So if you, by going through the glossary, you are going to have a personal study guide through the curriculum. Something feels foggy, look it up in the index.
Yeah.
Right? It's really just that easy. If you don't know where to study, just passively read the glossary until you catch something fuzzy.
Even when you're doing your poop quizzes and things like that, I know that it usually tells you afterwards why you got it wrong and why you got it right. And that is very valuable too. But I would also maybe have a little piece of paper or a little journal thing and
little
just
crap sheet.
Every time that you write on your toilet paper, every time that there's a word that you're not familiar with, just add it to the list and just start checking them off and say, yeah, I know that one. I know that. I don't know that one. And then see where that expands. That's great advice.
Yeah. Registry is difficult. but there's a lot of tools, a lot of resources, a lot of good programs out there. Just lean in and be consistent and be confident you're already a success. Nobody has ever asked me in an interview how many times I took national registry.
Yeah.
And the trauma stories, the horror stories you hear about from all these people that have been successful, like how bad can it possibly be?
Yeah.
Oh, it was so hard. I had to take it 3 times. Yes. And then you passed.
Right.
It's not insurmountable.
Mhm.
Like you literally got the job.
Right.
So let's not scare everybody. Let's just recognize that it sucks, but then majority of people get past it. Like 7 out of 10 people get past it. Or if you're in different programs, I'm just saying I'm not going to drop numbers,
Yeah.
but some people beat the 7 out of 10. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's stuff you can do.
That's awesome. We'll end it with that. I want to say to this Reddit user, need an easy name, which is a fun name on there.
Yeah.
What you're feeling is completely normal. I want to just acknowledge that, validate you. I love the passion that you have, that this means so much to you, that you are willing to ask for guidance on this and just publicly display that this is an important thing to you and you care.
Wise and mature.
That's it's wise, it's mature, it's very relatable to a lot of us. And so even though you sent this post for your own, you're also helping others to normalize that feeling. And then I want to just tell you that what you're feeling is the same thing that everyone feels. And you most likely passed if you're a 94% test taker. And if you didn't, any of the things that we talked about are the reasons why. It's mostly probably psychological. It's probably not information based. And if it is, we told you exactly how to fix it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
See you in the next one. Hey, don't forget to subscribe. If you like it, subscribe so we can get some more of these out there. And if there's something you particularly want to see, send it out in Reddit or comment below. We'll do what we can. We like kicking it, talking about it anyway, so it's fun.
Yeah, please do. Please subscribe and follow us on social media. On our social media Instagram page, we post daily quizzes. So this folds right into this. You can literally go onto there and interact with quizzes. It's free, it's fun. And if you missed it that day, no worries. I go ahead and save those right into the highlights, and they're in categories: cardiac, respiratory, neuro, etc. And so play along with us, engage, drop us a comment, and we're going to continue to post and have a great time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.